Funding for Roots Race and Culture is provided in part by the Norman C. and Barbara L. Tanner Charitable Support Trust and by donations to PBS Utah from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Roots, Race, and Culture, where we bring you into candid conversations about shared cultural experiences. I'm Daner Gerald.
And I'm Lonzo Liggins. What is it like to grow up with parents from two different racial or ethnic backgrounds? How does that shape your view of the world? How does it shape your view of love and identity, especially here in Utah?
According to Census.gov, the multiracial population is the fastest growing demographic in the United States, increasing by 276% between 2010 and 2020. And in Utah alone, the multiracial population increased by 269% in that same period. Now, unless y'all have been under a rock this past year, I'm sure you've heard about the well-publicized rap battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Drake was attacked for being half black and half Jewish. This brought to light a lot of dirty laundry, particularly in the black community, about racial identity when one of your parents is not black. So, joining us today to help us unpack all of this, we have Chantel Squires and eBay Hamilton.
I'm Chantel Squires. I was born and raised in Lehi, Utah, and my mother is Peruvian. She was born in Lima, Peru, and lived there up until she was 18. And my dad is from Utah, Centerville, Utah.
eBay.
So I was born in Long Beach, California. My mother's from Orem, Utah, and my father is from Indianapolis, Indiana. So I grew up with the black side of my family, which is my father's side, and the white side, which is my mom.
Okay. How did being from two different races affect your experience in that regard?
Yeah, growing up in Lehi, Utah, I mean, it was very, very white. When I was little, I was in the sun all day. So I was a lot darker than I am right now. And I didn't ever see anyone that looked like me. And it was a weird experience because my mom, I'm even darker than my mother. So wow. And she was very self-conscious about being dark. And so I just always felt like I was different. And not being able to see myself in anyone around me, it was a weird experience. I've had to unpack it for many years because it's a experience of not knowing where I belonged. You know, it was like, who am I? I'm not like anybody else, but what does that mean for me? And that's hard to figure out when you're that young also. Yeah, and also figuring out, like, you know, people would say things about people with dark skin and, you know, so what are you supposed to make of that? So I actually hated my skin all the way up through even high school. I just felt like I didn't, like in terms of being around people, I just didn't even feel like I was one of them.
Because here's the thing, I'm biracial. So, I mean, I really get this whole thing. And I'm really curious as to how you two viewed the world, specifically other people growing up.
Looking around at people who were different races, like growing up in Lehi, I didn't actually see a lot of people.
I saw one race, so it all looked the same to
me. and when I would see somebody that looked more like me, like it was really, it's really peaceful, actually. Like when I've recently, like the last 3 years, I went to Mexico for the first time, and there's just like people from all over the world were in this like area that I was in. And I just sat there, I was like, this is the craziest experience I've ever had, because I just felt like I looked like people. And it was just really calming. But when I'd see, like all my cousins were white, and I don't know, I did just feel like I didn't belong anywhere. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It was just this weird, it was almost like I didn't really exist, you know, around people. It was like, you know, people would be looking and they'd just skip over me.
Let's hear your perspective on that.
Well, I didn't really think about it much as a kid. I grew up with my white mother and my white brother, and while my dad was in my life, I was in a white family, and I just didn't think about it much until grade school, and other people started asking me why I looked the way I did when my mom looked the way she did. Folks started asking if I was adopted, and just thinking like, why would you, why do you think that? And then realizing over time that, the world sees me very differently than I see myself, and my family sees me, and my friends see me. And like Chantel, I think there were comments about, oh, you've got really nice hair. There's, I would get comments about my complexion, but things that maybe people thought were complimentary, but definitely made you feel like you were different, even if they were nice, whatever, things to hear or to say, or the intention was good. Still, it was, you're different than everybody else here. Yeah. And my father, when I was younger, used to always say, you have the best of both worlds. And I always thought that was just an interesting idea and concept because I didn't feel that way. I felt like if somebody didn't like black people, they didn't like me. And in the black community, white folks didn't always know what I was, but they mostly thought I was black, and quite often are surprised when they find out that I have any white in me, let alone that I'm half white. Wow. But the black community, there's never been a black person I've met who didn't know right away that I was biracial.
Right. Okay, wait a minute. Now, I feel like I'm like the odd man out here, but I will say I can relate to some of this because that feeling that you had, I had that same sort of experience like when you went to Mexico, when I went to Africa, right? Because I was thinking, I'm going to the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kinshasa. There was all this hype about it being one of the most dangerous cities in the world, et cetera. And I thought, man, they're gonna see me. I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb. I'm gonna be like a target on my back. Oh, get that dumb American. He's gonna give us some money or whatever. And when I got there, after my nerves settled, it didn't take long, I realized nobody was giving me a second glance. I fit in, like you said you fit in Mexico. People looked at me and they were just like going, oh, he's from this tribe. Oh, he's from that tribe. And I was like, wow, it is so nice to be around people who look exactly like me, even though they speak 4 or 5 languages and I only speak 1 or 2. And it's like there's something about the connection that you have when somebody looks like you. And it's a powerful sort of feeling, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to say much to know that you understand each other because of that shared experience.
Well, and you also have biracial kids.
That's true. That's true.
And one of the things here, like in Utah, is you'll see a lot of interracial relationships, in particular, especially between black and white. And a lot of people have these really intense feelings about it. And I know you've heard it. I know eBay's definitely heard it growing up. And a lot of it has to do not based on the fact that it's what somebody prefers. It's just the fact that it's the availability. When you have 100 to 1, I challenge anyone to go into a grocery store and see how many black women or black men that they see, or anywhere really. So I mean, it becomes about what's available in the dating pool, at many times. But it's not just something that it's like, oh, this is just what they prefer here. But you do see a lot of biracial people, and I wanted to ask you guys something because when I grew up biracial, I never viewed what was happening with my parents as wrong. People around me had kind of said, oh, they're not supposed to do that. The blacks aren't supposed to be with whites. So here's these things. But in my brain, I never saw like what they were doing was evil or bad. Did you both feel that same way?
I definitely felt like, my parents were separated. And so there was always a sense of, something didn't work, but I didn't think it was race related at all. And my time with in the LDS church, I learned about the Lamanites and this idea that there are people that have been cursed with darker skin, and there were questions that came up for me that I wanted to present to my white family about how they viewed people of color, how they viewed my father, how they viewed this relationship. And eventually I just settled on, I love my family, I'm not gonna dig into this. But I would talk to other people and learn that it was frowned upon. It was illegal for interracial marriages in America, we would have been considered, a crime, even 20 years, prior to when we were born. So knowing that this was definitely something that was frowned upon, and I still hear it on occasion, which is surprising to me.
I did have this really interesting thing from the conversation we had before the show. And you were talking about some of the advantages, some of the people who've given some amazing contributions to art, music, society, politics. And there's a laundry list here of people that you came up with. And these are people who are biracial, right? I'm just going to speed through this. We got Bob Marley, Prince, Drake, J. Cole, Sade, Alicia Keys, Jimi Hendrix, Charlie Patton, who's the father of the Delta Blues, one of my favorites since I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, Lenny Kravitz, Olivia Rodrigo, Slash.
Guns N' Roses.
I didn't even realize Slash from the Guns N' Roses was biracial. I had no idea.
Mama's black, yep.
So who we got? Bruno Mars, Frederick Douglass?
Frederick Douglass, yeah, man.
Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Colin Kaepernick or Colin?
Colin
right?
Kaepernick.
It's Colin Powell, Colin Kaepernick. Malcolm X, Key and Peele, and of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And this list goes on and on. So I'm curious, why do you guys think that people from two different backgrounds who are biracial can be such contributors creatively or otherwise to society? Let's throw it to you, Ibe.
I think when you come from, whether you were involved with both sides of the family and these different cultures, I think because you early on are probably pretty aware that you're not completely one of these things, it makes it a little easier earlier than most folks to start looking at yourself as an individual. And because of that, you might start exploring some of your individual interests that aren't necessarily a cultural thing.
Do you think that does have a good impact on an artist or just, a creative in general?
Yeah, like as you were talking, Ibe, I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, there's less expectation in some ways. I feel like that, for me, kind of opened me up. I mean, I was in a bluegrass band for 5 years, and I played the banjo and sang. And because I have, on my dad's side of the family, I just came up with it myself. Like one day I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do this, but I found out that I have a grandpa's uncle that played the banjo, right, on my white side of the family. And it's like, oh, well, maybe that's where that came from. But then, like, I was just in a musical, and I was dancing the salsa. And, like, I've always had that in me. I have, like...
It was so easy.
It was so easy. And maybe that's expansive thinking, probably. And I just felt very free to explore who I was. And there was just less expectation of me because I wasn't Peruvian and I wasn't white, so I had to decide what I was going to be, and it was like, well, I guess I'm a banjo-playing salsa dancer that likes to make movies. And I would say, too, with filmmaking, I just love diverse stories, and I think that makes me a unique filmmaker in the sense that, like, I'm always searching for stories that are different and that, like, I can relate to, even if I can't relate to it. Like, I don't know what it's like to be black. I have no idea. But I know that I don't know what it's like well enough to, like, work really hard to try and tell a story that is true in some way, and do the work and consult with people and, like, open up myself to, like, bringing other voices in because I feel like I'm another voice. And so I think that's been a good thing for my career, for sure.
So there's an image that we have here that we're going to show you today. It's an article by Psychology Today. It's by this author named Jennifer Latson. It's called A Biracial Advantage. And Duke University psychologist Sarah Gaither said more people in this group say that being multiracial is an advantage rather than a disadvantage, 19% versus 4%. Gaither's research also found that those who identify as multiracial instead of just one race report higher self-esteem, greater well-being, and increased social engagement.
My kids are biracial, as you mentioned, and in school, I feel like they stand out in a positive way versus, like, the negative experience that you guys may have had. All the white kids want to be cool. Like, they're all listening to hip hop. They're all doing this. And so if you've got that sort of built into your DNA culturally, I could see how today's society, even particularly even in Utah, that might be considered an advantage because you're not just like every other, white LDS Mormon person out there or something.
And representation is important. Nowadays you do see a lot more biracial folks. We had a mixed president. If you're a younger person now growing up and seeing the world right now, and we're so much more connected with the internet and all of that, so you see the world definitely in a different way.
The way I felt about myself and the color of my skin when I was a child, it was college that started shifting it for me when my friends were like, well, you're lucky you don't have to go to the tanning bed. And I was like, what are you talking about? What is happening here? And that, just like the beginning of that, and then having so many friends that were from other countries and from different places, and just the collection of the beautiful colors of skin of all my friends, it started to evolve. But there's been, in the last 10, 15 years, the color of my skin, the background that I have, being raised by a Peruvian mother and a white father, that has kind of blended into my life in a really beautiful way that I'm so grateful for. So I think it's a shift for me, right? It's the healing that's happened inside of me to learn how to love myself and see myself. Representation is huge, so I feel like it's easy for me to make friends.
That's our kind of motto in the show, is that we all have these shared cultural experiences. You might be, your father might be black, your mother may be from Peru, but you have such similar experiences. And, there's also some downsides. And so in that same article, I'm going to read this quote here: multiracials face the highest rate of exclusion of any group, which kind of goes back to what you were saying. They're never black enough, white enough, Asian enough, Latino enough. So
Let's get into that.
Yeah, let's do
I just want to say before we start delving into that, you were talking about going to the Congo and sort of blending in and, feeling like, see, that's one of the downsides, because I've been to, a lot of places I will go, I will all of a sudden look like those people. It's a weird thing. I'll go to Puerto Rico and, even though they're kind of on the African diaspora, they'll be like, oh, you're Puerto Rican. I'll be like, okay. I went to Morocco. The people were like, you look Moroccan with your beard. And I'm like, okay, I'll be Moroccan. There's all these different races that we kind of pass as at times. I'm sure eBay's gotten it. I'm sure that you've gotten it multiple times. And a lot of that comes from...
I'm Australian. Some people.
I can see that, like New Zealand. But let's talk about the downsides of it. What do you think about that quote?
Well, I relate to that. More often than not, there is you're not black enough, you're not white enough, or this question about how authentic. Do you really like the music you listen to? Do you really like the things that you're doing? There is always this question about, are you real? Who are you? When I'm with white folks, especially, there is this pushback, you hear it often about, why do you always want to make it about race, right? This sort of comes up in conversations. And what I like to remind the white folks in my life about is, think about being the only white person in a space. It's not an experience that you have. Yeah. And for those of us who are the only one or one of a few in these spaces, we have to think about navigating our days very differently. It's not that we want to constantly think about race. It's not that we always want to talk about it or make something, race the central point of it. Is that it's always something we have to think about. Yeah, it's always there. And I think when you're biracial, while you can navigate these spaces, a little easier, I think, than some other folks, there's still a sense that, am I really supposed to be here? Am I really accepted here?
I find that to be the case in black spaces too. Yeah. I'm just keeping it real. People, if I go to a black space, there'll always be at least a mention at some point about my light skin. What do you mix with? What do you're not really one of us. I was working with these three black dudes at a car dealership back in the day, and one of them just stood up and just said, "What is wrong with this picture? Who doesn't fit in this picture right now?" And they all just looked at me, and I was like, you got biracial kids. Do you say this to your kids at the dinner table? Wow. But there was this, I get reminders too from the black side about not being black enough. And when we were talking in the intro with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, is there pushback really from our own people at times? Do you get pushback from Peruvian people about you not being enough, Chantel? And I'm curious about that.
Well, the only Peruvian person that is in my life is my mom, and I think she loves me. But the thing that for me, because there's not a lot of half Peruvian, half white people. My grandmother did come over, and I knew her a little bit, but so I never had that community here, right? And so trying to find that side of me, I think I've gravitated just toward every other ethnicity out there, right? So like my last film was about a woman who was Black, and that was hard. It was a really hard experience because it was like, well, you're not Black. How can you tell that story? And it's like, so can I only tell stories about half Peruvian, half white people? Because like, I don't see that anywhere, right? Like representation is just, it's hard to see it. But I'm like, but I want to tell those stories. Like, who else is going to tell that story if I don't?
Right.
There's so many other stories. I've read lots of scripts of like stories about a white man, and I'm like, that story's been told so many times, I feel really inclined to tell the story of someone else's experience because I can relate to that in some way. Because even though it's not mine, nobody's gonna have the same experience. And having the color of your skin, it's so visual, right? So people ask, like, what are you mixed with, right? Like that matters to them, but it's like, there's so much more to us than that.
When you see me, I couldn't pass. And, people are always very aware of, that there's a person of color in the room with me. And so if you say something racist around me, you are intending, or at least that's my assumption. Right. And, I will most likely just cut you off. And there's certain, you learn growing up, I think people of color, just across the board, we learn some of the hidden rules, like the things to keep us safe, right? Like, here's the places where I can go, here's where I can't go. If someone's dropping certain things, they're saying things in a certain way, maybe that's not a space that I'm going to be okay in, you know?
Yeah.
Which makes your situation even more shocking,
Yeah. When I first moved to Florida, I didn't have my car, so I walked to the closest place to grab something to eat in the neighborhood. And it was a restaurant. It was called Florida Crackers. And I walked in, and it was like the jukebox went, and I looked around. I just turned around and walked right back out.
So I wanted to add something here before we're going to wrap up here. But there are some benefits to society about being around multiracial people. It's in the same article that I was reading. So being around multiracial people can boost creativity and agile thinking for monoracials. Monoracial is a person who's like one race. This is according to a Hawaiian psychologist, Kristen Parker. Humans are compartmentalized by nature, and labeling others by social category is part of how we make sense of our interactions. She says that race is just one category, and humans historically relied on it to decide who's the in and the out group, right? So racially ambiguous faces, however, foil this essentialist approach, so that's a good thing. So she found that just being exposed to more diverse populations, it can actually help people's not only ability to get along with other people, but ability to like improve their racial attitudes and their own self-worth. And she said to change it, it's not only about being in a diverse environment, but soaking up things that make difference. Like you have to actually formulate relationships with people from other racial groups. Now I know this personally because my wife, she's from Hawaii. She lived in Oregon, grew up there, but then she moved out to Hawaii when she was 16. And she said it's so multiracial out there that it changed her entire impact of her perspective of how she viewed other people. So I think that that's a good thing to note for people who may be in one racial group, who are white or who are Black or who are Hispanic, whatever, that if you do expand your circle and you're around people of more than one race, then it does kind of help your outlook and minimize that, feeling of being isolated. This is my group, and that's it. I'm not moving. I'm not dating anyone outside this group. I'm not going to be with anyone but whoever's in this group. So that's just something to keep in mind as we wrap up. But thank you guys so much for being on the show, man.
I would like to say also thank you for, like, there's a part of me that's like, am I biracial enough? Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, even coming here, and it's like, I get to hang out with you guys, with all the experiences that you've had, and it's just like, overcoming that feeling like we are trying to do that, like figure out what the other person is, who the other people are in our lives, and how we're more similar than we are different. And so I've loved being here and being
thank
a
you.
part of
Thank
this.
Do you have any last little words for us before we go?
I think that the most important thing a human can do is get out of your bubble, your comfort zone, and travel, meet other people from different cultures, and not just if you have the opportunity to really get to know someone who has a different background than you, who looks different than you, that's one of the best things you can do for yourself. And biracial folks, we have that experience from such a young age because so many people feel a little more comfortable letting us into those spaces, even if we're not fully accepted. So it gives us a bit more perspective. And I think the folks in my life who are close friends, they do like to talk about this sort of thing with me. And it's just a really beautiful thing to get out there and explore the world and build your empathy and create those human connections with folks that are from a different group.
Yep. I personally feel like being biracial was one of the best things that happened in my life, and I absolutely have, love for everyone. So
Well,
thank you
awesome.
guys so much for being here.
Thank you. Well, from all of us at PBS Utah, thank you for joining this conversation. And as always, other episodes and extended conversations can be found on our website, pbsutah.org/roots, or on the PBS Utah YouTube channel.
Yes, indeed. And if you have feedback or ideas for other episodes, be sure to give us a shout out on social media. But until next time, for Roots, Race, and Culture, y'all, we are out.
Funding for Roots, Race, and Culture is provided in part by the Norman C. and Barbara L. Tanner Charitable Support Trust and by donations to PBS Utah from viewers like you. Thank you.